Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we're going to talk about vaccines. We're going to talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and a little bit about mandatory vaccinations. But before we do that, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com so you can get plugged in with all of our latest content. Of course, you can follow us on minds.com, on steemit/DTube. You can join our Discord channel where I post articles that I read, also just kind of chat with everybody beyond YouTube if you want to check that out. You can also sign up for our text list. Again, I highly recommend you do this because you can get text directly to your phone instead of relying on YouTube or whoever else to tell you whenever I'm going live. Also, you can sign up to support on a monthly basis on Patreon. Thanks to everybody who has been signing up to support. That amount has gone up, and we're getting back to documentaries, so I'm excited about that. It's going to be the first documentary will be a 5G documentary, so stay tuned. And if you want to sign up for our email newsletter, you can do so right here. Of course, support our partners, My Brave Botanicals, right there. And we are doing a fundraising campaign all this month through the month of August. If you want to donate anything you can to continue our operations as we battle against the corporate media censorship and try to keep spreading awareness. So thank you. All right. So just a couple of days ago, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Was hosting a rally in New York, I believe. Yeah, Albany, New York. This is the second one. Maybe not the second. Maybe even more than second, but they did one back in May, this story here, back in May 2019 of this year, and they had a big crowd then, so they did another rally this time, and basically it seems like they're following the court dates of what's going on every time there's some update in the court case, which is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and civil rights lawyer Michael Sussman, which are fighting against the New York legislature, saying that the law they passed requiring mandatory vaccinations and banning all non-medical exemptions is direct violation of religious freedom and a family's right to express that freedom by refusing to vaccinate their children. And they're seeking to temporarily stop the law from taking effect before the start of the 2019-2020 school year. So as I said, there's an ongoing case. Robert F. Kennedy and the other lawyer, Michael Sussman, went into the courthouse trying to get this injunction from the judge after a previous case was already turned down. Now, this is the thing, is we're fighting this. This battle is going from the advocates and the mothers and the parents who are fighting on social media and then being censored, of course, groups being censored on Pinterest, on Instagram, hashtags being censored, groups being deleted on Facebook, and books being taken down off Amazon, documentaries, things of that sort. So generally just this information being kept from people, which is only motivating them to look into it more. And so that's going on, but there's also legal battles taking place. And of course, this was in response to a law that was signed by Governor Andrew Cuomo on June 13th. And this came in response to what they're calling mass measles outbreaks in pockets of Brooklyn, primarily Hasidic Jew neighborhoods, prompting Mayor Bill de Blasio to declare a public health emergency and that mandatory vaccination order we talked about. So they gathered out there, and it did make the news. Like I said, this a few months ago. It seems like they're making news, but most of the articles I saw, they said there was hundreds of people or a small amount of people. But then you look at this here, and here's a rally of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Let's just check this out.
United States. That's right. Yes. We did not hear addressed a most recent Supreme Court case, which upheld by a 7-2 vote, not a 5-4 vote. There was no split along ideological or political lines. By a 7-2 vote, the fundamental principle that state action, whether it's administrative or legislative, may not be motivated by an active hostility to religion.
All right, so the battle there, of course, is over the religious exemptions in New York City. But this is actually part of a bigger battle, which is the push for mandatory vaccinations all around the United States and maybe all around the world, and the push to take away medical freedom and health freedom. So here's some pictures from the New York Alliance for Vaccine Rights. At one point, you see Robert F. Kennedy Jr. out there talking on the steps of the courthouse, and then other pictures here, him speaking right here. Check this out. I mean, there's a lot of people there. Look at that, up and down the block, all wearing white. Some saying the numbers are in the thousands, and pictures of vaccine-injured kids, I think. Here they are going inside the courthouse. Okay, so one of the guy in the white shirt was the attorney, Michael Sussman, because I do know that RFK Jr. has a throat issue where he can't speak very loudly. So these are the two men fighting for the families, and these are all their supporters in New York City, in Albany specifically. And yeah, there's, I guess, some Hasidic Jewish supporters who are there. And let's see, we got some more pictures here. So I don't know if you heard about this in the mainstream at all, but if you did, they probably said there was hundreds of people, not a crowd of 1,000 or so. But yeah, there you go, pictures. And, this just is generally part of, as I said, the conversation around those who support mandatory vaccinations and those don't. Hey, I'm going to throw out a quick thing on the side here because I see you guys. I'm sure you guys are seeing this over here. I don't feel the need to do a video about every single Epstein update, but look, Epstein spent hours alone with mystery woman in jail. Yeah, he was probably having sex with one person before he died or before he escaped or whatever happened. And they've spotted Ghislaine Maxwell out at an In-N-Out eating burgers. And yeah, so just in case you need an Epstein update. But the vaccine issue is part of the bigger fight for those who are pushing for mandatory vaccinations and then labeling anybody who has questions anti-vaxxers. Now, these two articles that I just looked through a few moments ago, one from Time called "They're Chipping Away Inside the Grassroots Efforts to Fight Mandatory Vaccines," and this one, "Are Anti-Vaxxers Conscientious Objectors?" And I'm going to read a little bit of both of these because I think these are important when we're having that discussion. Right off the bat, though, what I want to say is that if you support health freedom, medical freedom, as far as this system is concerned, you've already lost. I include myself, we've already lost because they believe that the Supreme Court has already ruled on the matter, and the Supreme Court has previously ruled that mandatory vaccinations are not a violation of constitutional rights. So at some point that will be invoked again if people continue to fight this, and we'll get, they'll tell us straight to their faces, we're going to come vaccinate you whether you like it or not. Now, when I'm reading this article here from Time Magazine, it's basically just getting to know some of the parents, and it's saying like, oh, this mom, she was having her first child. She was concerned about GMOs and processed food. And, well, she just started to ask questions. And it was when she started researching how the best to achieve that goal, she bumped into vaccines. And, well, this was 14 years ago, and this was a bad time to begin thinking about such things. Like, it's bad to question things. And that's because that fraudulent 1998 paper by British physician Andrew Wakefield came out with the link to autism and vaccines. And so she just started thinking at such a bad time because there was just horrible information out there. And it's just funny the way they frame this. And, again, they kind of they talk about people who are, questioning vaccines. They talk about them as anti-vaxxers, and it says, like most such activists, they prefer to frame the issue in terms of choice and medical freedom. Well, maybe not that they prefer to frame it that way, but maybe that's what they're talking about. Insisting that they are not against vaccines, but rather believe the decision whether to vaccinate is best left to parents. Yeah, that's pretty much what people are saying. For the sake of clarity, however, the term anti-vaccine will be used for those who oppose mandatory vaccinations and pro-vaccine for those who support them. So you see how they do that? It's like, look, we get they are taking different arguments, but hey, for the sake of clarity, we're going to call them anti-vaccine either way, just to reinforce that into everybody's minds who reads this. This is an anti-vax or anti-vaccine, even if that's not the case that they're staking or the battle they're fighting. So they go through here and talk about the various groups: Texans for Vaccines Choice, which is out here in Texas, of course. And there are registered anti-vaccine PACs in at least 4 other states: Oregon, Michigan, Oklahoma, and Texas. And says that every state in the country except Alaska and West Virginia has at least one anti-vax organization, according to Vaccine Liberation website, which tracks them. And they basically just talk about how they're being, pushed by the anti-vax people, and they're not just demonstrating, but they're actively challenging pro-vax legislators and running candidates against them in primaries. Oh, they're getting politically engaged. I mean, whether or not that's a waste of time or not is a different conversation. But they're like trying to describe them getting politically involved as this like, oh my God, we should be concerned. They're getting organized, which is what they want people to do, to be concerned and scared of anybody who challenges the system and doesn't just, go off and get a vaccine because the doctor says so. Anybody who doesn't blindly worship authority, basically. So basically they're saying it's not true, any of it, and the nonsense comes at a very bad time. They say this, that the pharmaceutical industry and individual pediatricians and parts of the government are not driven by profits. Okay, I think anybody would say that's bullshit. The parents question the links to autism as well as ADHD, asthma, and other conditions. They say that vaccines are dangerous. So they're basically just making it clear: don't look into these claims. None of these are real. Oh, by the way, the World Health Organization in 2019 says that vaccine hesitancy is a leading threat to global health. So it's just trying to slowly build up and scare people into questioning anything. And again, this comes down to what it always comes down to. I've realized as I have these conversations is it's about collectivism versus individual liberty. The people who believe that the collective good outweighs your individual rights. And it says that public health experts, what galls public health experts, drives them crazy, is that anti-vaxxers' personal choice really isn't all that personal. Depending on the disease, it's necessary for about 95% of the population to be vaccinated to provide so-called herd immunity, the ability of well-inoculated community to protect the few of its members who can't be vaccinated due to age, illness, or weakened immune system. Now, this is an area that I'm just starting to dig into because I continuously hear this argument of herd immunity. I have heard people say things and send me links that I haven't checked out yet, saying herd immunity is overblown. It's the concept that is not, proven fact, and it's just being repeated over and over ad nauseum because that's what people say. And I will say that's usually where that argument comes up when you say, look, man, I'm not going to let the state or the government override my individual liberty and my sovereignty just so that you can feel safe and healthy, right? If you got your vaccine, then you go do your thing and I'll do my thing. And they say, yeah, but your need for freedom ends where my health and public health begins, basically. And it's kind of the same goal that the article here is making over and over, is just trying to say that by the end of this really long article and this other one over here, they basically just come down to the collectivist argument that, if you have a conscience, you need to think about what is good for everybody. And, there's no reason to question vaccines, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one other point I do want to make in here, though, is when they're talking about anti-vaxxer groups getting organized and trying to fight through the legislature and run candidates and stuff like that, it basically admits here that it says warm bodies and loud voices may be the biggest advantage the activists have because in other respects they're outgunned, especially financially. Some, like Texans for Vaccines Choice, are 501c, but their funding is so low, less than $50,000 a year, they're not required to file a long-form disclosure with the IRS. It says the group donated dozens of candidates in the 2018 cycle, but its biggest contribution was $5,500. Its smallest was $25. So whenever Dr. Peter Hotez, the doctor who's appeared on Joe Rogan and everywhere else, spitting his disinformation, his pro-vaccine, pro-mandatory vaccination propaganda, who he's based here in Baylor College of Medicine here in the Houston area, he's out there saying these anti-vaxxer groups are getting ignored. Texans for vaccine, or they're getting organized. Texans for vaccine choice. This is a huge lobby. We got to be concerned about it. And look at this. They're freaking saying the group's giving $5,500 at most. One of the best funded, according to ProPublica, is the NVIC, which they call the National Vaccine Information Center, whose recent available fundraising totals from 2015 to 16, so this is 3 years ago, were just over $1 million. $1 million. That still doesn't really go very far in politics. I mean, maybe you can give a bunch to small amounts to candidates all over the country or something, but $1 million is not really anything in the political game. And they even admit that here. That's real money, but it doesn't compare with that of the pharmaceutical industry, which donated more than $2 million to the campaigns of California state legislatures. So, I mean, they're kind of calling out their own thing here, saying these groups aren't even really that organized. They're not going to be able to fight legally. And then the other point I wanted to make here is, let me see if I can find it. I think I unhighlighted my little spot. Okay, so they talk about how parents start not complying with the vaccine orders. And it says non-compliance can happen with the connivance of doctors. No sooner than had the 2015 California law gone into effect than anti-vax parents began looking for physicians who would sign a medical waiver even if they'd never met the child. One doctor alone was responsible for about a third of the 500 medical exemptions, according to health department records. There was nothing technically illegal about what she was doing. So they're saying that there's nothing illegal about this doctor was doing, giving out exemptions to parents who are trying to escape vaccines. Maybe they're being tricky, but there's nothing illegal. But they're sitting here trying to make it sound horrible and dangerous and bad and whatever else. All right, this one is more interesting. I think it's called Are Anti-Vaxxers Conscientious Objectors? And it gives a little history about the the history of for one, the word conscience and conscientious objectors, and it says that conscientious objectors actually didn't start with rejecting war, but actually people who have refused vaccinations. These objectors were not refusing to carry weapons; they were insisting on the right to carry disease. And they go back to the United Kingdom Vaccination Act of 1853 that required the vaccination of all infants and was resisted by many parents. So there's just about 2 paragraphs of history here that I feel like I can dig deeper into, guys, and I think I'm going to do a video on the history of mandatory vaccinations and try to draw some conclusions and show people that, this fight has been going on for hundreds of years now, and people are still concerned. But I will say again, this New York battle that we were just talking about with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and all these parents says one of the legal precedents for public health emergencies is a 1905 case, Jacobson versus Massachusetts, in which the Supreme Court interpreted vaccination as a form of self-defense, finding that, quote, a community has the right to protect itself against an epidemic of disease which threatens the safety of its members. Legally, a person carrying an infectious disease is not unlike a person carrying a weapon. So, if they use this 1905 Supreme Court ruling, basically they're saying that the vaccination and forced vaccination is the way for the community, again, the collective good versus the individual liberties, to defend themselves against potentially dangerous individuals. And the rest of this article just breaks down like whether we should listen to our own conscience and whether we can actually know something or believe something. And it's just trying to take the real basic arguments, which say that, look, you don't have the right to stick medicine in my body one way or the other, and take it to this really abstract philosophical place and then bring it back down and try to just make it seem like anti-vaxxers are bad. I'll read you this last little part. The word conscience comes from the Latin verb consire, meaning to know with. Before Kant, the conscience was imagined as a bridge between the self and others. We now need to be conscientious in this sense, engaging with others outside our circle, as well as in his sense of examining ourselves. Collective knowledge is embedded in the word conscience, along with the possibility that we cannot know alone. Our bodies are not entirely dependent, vulnerable as they are to infection from others, and neither are our minds. Conscience is not an isolated space, cut off from the rest of the world. It's what reminds us of our own fallibility, and what makes us accountable to others. As measles spread across the world, even in places where it is no longer endemic, the meaning of conscience suggests that none of us is exempt from our obligations to others. So again, it's just this collective argument. These are interesting articles. I'll include them in the links below. But yeah, there's a push. Parents, thousands of people gathered in the streets with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the attorney, Michael Sussman. And they're trying to fight it in court, but we'll see what happens. And overall, though, this is, like I said, the court's already ruled. They think you have no right to bodily autonomy and to sovereignty. This should be a blow to those who think that America is really this home of beautiful individual liberties. I'm not saying we don't have more than some other places, but if you think we're the land of the free truly and that things are working out great and all you got to do is continue to support the system, be that Donald Trump or elect a new Democratic president or whatever else, and everything's going to be better, then you're really just not paying attention. Because the vaccine battle is just one example of where these systems and these various components are coming for your individual liberties because they want to be in your head. They want to be in your home, in your body through the healthcare system. They want to be in your mind through the technology and in your homes with the surveillance and the home surveillance systems. And they want to know that if they ever need to come into your house or if you ever get labeled a terrorist, if you ever speak wrong or have wrong think, then you'll be removed from the internet and maybe eventually taken out of this world. So the vaccine battle connects to a lot bigger picture. And I hope you guys who are concerned about vaccines and maybe who only be single issue activists or concerned individuals, parents, etc., that you will realize that this is a part of a bigger picture. All right, guys, you know the drill. If you want to support me, go to patreon.com/Derrick Broze. Please consider supporting our fundraising campaign in the link below. And until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Yes, you are free, despite what some people want you to think. You are free. Peace.